We return to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the statements of the President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro.
Once again,
como lo ha dicho
as
Ministro
the
González,
Prime Minister Rafa Gonzalez said, our organization has the maturity enough to possess an infrastructure high in efficiency in a General Secretary office that represents us all in a complementary way to pro-tempore presidency and continues the plans of all presidencies that currently are happening. We have enough maturity, as we remember with Lula just minutes ago. We have 16 years in this renewed path. That is the path of our liberators in the 19th and 18th century, of our founders, the joint path of our America. It was on December of 2008, December 17th of 2008, that by the first time in the Group of Rio frame, the President Lula summoned us to the 23 countries of our America. The first time of Latin America sat together and reunite ourselves, and it was decided that to move forward and to build a common forum. Then in Mexico, under a government, in this case of the far right, we got together to discuss the concept in February of 2010. And the concept of a community building was approved for Latin American and Caribbean countries. The concept of CELAC was approved. And then in Venezuela, 2 and 3 of the 2nd and 3rd of December of 2011, for the 200th anniversary of the Independence Declaration approved in this continent, with the commander Hugo Chavez in front, to officially constitute the CELAC and to approve the main principles of our organization. And then the General Secretary Guterres, that I'm honored with his presence in this meeting, we went through the year 2013 with Sebastián Piñera in Chile, the president, rest in peace, from the far right. Cuba, marvelous Cuba, in January 2014, when it was approved, the mainstream of our organization, to declare Latin America and the Caribbean peace zone. And then we got to Costa Rica in 2015, Ecuador in 2016, Dominican Republic 2017, Mexico 2021 because of the pandemic came, Buenos Aires a year ago, and today in St. Vincent in the Grenadines. And we've been deciding jointly the next presidencies of our organization. Honduras with the presidency of Mara Castro, and then Colombia with the President Gustavo Petro. So we're completing this collective organism which was planned always for our organization. Here with the marvelous intervention of the presidents and prime minister, we've seen how is getting an agenda, and we were saying that to the President Xiomara Castro and President Gustavo Petro. We're forming a way of consultation and decision in real time, not to wait only the development in the summit, but also to maintain interconnected from all of the subjects in the world, a presidential agenda in a permanent matter, in an official way, to have an agenda of subjects in a worldwide panorama. The African Union has a very known structure, a strong structure with a joint work of integration and treatment of conflicts and big subjects. A lot of them are admiring the destruction of the European Union, but are admiring from the outside light in the streets, darkness in the house. But we have to look into ourselves. We need to get into those structures. The European Union performs at least every 6 months meetings, and not fast meetings. They're capable to join themselves 1 to 3 days, analyzing subjects, taking decisions, because it cannot be just another step in the agenda of your work. It has to be a central agenda, the threatening agenda in institutionalizing and the politics with the capacity of access to the big subjects that are affecting us, the global warming, the peace in the region, the economic development, the trade inter-region. So we were saying in front of the López Obrador president, a great president from the CELAC, we were saying when we went to Mexico, how can we answer if we had a CELAC, a powerful CELAC, and will organize in a joint way the global pandemic and all that involved the pandemic for our region, if we could have been in a joint way with the knowledge, the scientific and medical, if we could go into the protection system and then the vaccines in a joint way. When we review the chaos that was presented to us in our region, the pandemic, it could be a next step from our history. So we have to move forward. So I think to the Prime Minister Rafa Gonsalves, to the Prime Minister Ruben Esquerri, who presided the CARICOM a week ago, to President Lula da Silva, because they were capable of summon to this encounter of understanding and peace on the December 4th here in San Vicente and the Grenadines with the President, to get into the differences that we have by inheriting from the colonialism, because the dispute from the Essequibo area, it comes from the colonialism stage. So I hope that the good relationships that have been established get deep, and sooner than later to reactivate the agreements, to search face-to-face both governments and both countries, a sustainable solution and a diplomatic solution to our differences since the 19th century. So the CELAC, if in some point have proved their capability to the dialogue and the diplomacy, is being under the presidency of the Rafa González comrade. We've been making the decision to make a peace territory. So to have peace has to be justice ground. Venezuela has been submitted in the 8 years, last years, to more than 930 coercive measures, criminal sanctions against the economy, against the social of Venezuela. So we've always raised our voice to demand the end of the blockade from our brother Cuba. So we have the consensus of the 33 countries from the CELAC. So we also had the consensus almost from the entire assembly. And the United States, instead of making amendments, on the contrary, is been hardening the blockade against Cuba, but also did it against against the people of Venezuela. 930 coercive measures that we've been resistant. I always say, I was talking with the Lula president now. Venezuela went from a very high income from petroleum, 100 years of oil producer. Next year, 700 only millions of income, 99% of loss of the income of Venezuela. Hard years that were seeking to collapse the Venezuelan society, to implement the so-called formula, the failed formula to change the regime through the waves of change in economy and social and politics of society. Venezuela was threatened of military intervention. Venezuela has lived through all these years being stuck with permanent conspiracy and permanent campaign to try to justify what cannot be justified against our country, against our society. Recently, we had a moment for our people. The agencies and the news and social network are muting and using as a manipulation campaign against our country. Recently, was robbed a plane from our airline, from one Argentinian airport. Didn't wait until the trial. But you know what that happened with that plane? A very modern plane with a huge... Because we went to Palestinian people, helping with that plane, and Suriname with the floodiness, and we helped our brothers Samuelson and the Grenadines. We helped in a lot of occasions to Haiti also to other countries of our region. In Miami was dismembered and exhibited to the press as a revenge act against Venezuela. The Citgo company, a very powerful company, is property of the Venezuelan state. It is calculated its cost in $12,000 million and net utility for $5,000 million is that they're lying in American banks being from Venezuela. We got information that Citgo company is going to be dismembered also and surrendered in silver lining to a group of coyotes. An economical aggression without borders, a revenge operation without limits. These organizations, us in Latin America and the Caribbean, we must react facing the sanction politics and aggression and economical war that is also another way to perturb our peers. This is Latin America and the Caribbean. It must be free of coercive measures and economical sanctions, free from interventions, from conspiracy, from complots, free from threats, from the use of force to solve regional conflicts, as is pretended. Venezuela is a country, a very noble country, that is being repeated in the international tabloids and international media. Venezuela this year is seeking the 31st elections, the 31st election in 25 years. I believe that Venezuela has one of the highest index of electoral process, joint electoral process in the history of election in the 3 decades in our continent, and I believe in the world. is always that, according to the Constitution, need to have an election. It has been done. However, for the Parliament, National Assembly, presidential elections, but it was in Venezuela where in 2004, by the first time, was made the referendum of Commander Hugo Chavez. 7 referendums were made. And other countries as Uruguay also practice those consultations and referendums. But upon Venezuela, they say all day that there is a tyranny, violation of the social and political rights. There is a permanent campaign to try to unlight and justify what it cannot be justified upon our country. Venezuela is getting prepared for elections absolutely transparent and trustworthy with electoral system that I would like that CELAC get to know it, and further than the manipulation and the lies. Last Friday was signed in the Parliament, the National Parliament, an agreement with 43 political parties from all the spectrum in the country. Were signed all the movements and federations, all of the religious currents, Muslim, Jews, Christians, all of them of all of the sectors of the cultural sector and the intellectual sector. And that agreement is fixed the basis for the full guarantees for an electoral process that is trustworthy in the second semester of this year as being established. We call it the White Agreement of Caracas, that is adding the agreements signed in Norway, Mexico, Barbados, and it gets wider the support spectrum for the social matters and the political matters and all those kind of agreements. So I ask in the CELAC to evaluate the possibility to observe of international observers to join the process of preparation and realization of the presidential polls from this day to the day of elections. And also to the General Secretary from the United Nations that go there, come and see the truth in a country that has been affected, the consultation system and the political system and the electoral system, further than the manipulation, further from the imperialist expressions and the neo-political expression. We've been making dialogues with a group of prime ministers and a group of presidents, the grave situation of our brother Palestine. Here in the CELAC there's been different opinions, and we respect the diversity of opinion, but the truth is, it goes more than 30,000 deaths by bombardment, by missile power, 15,000 children. Those children were making the war by Hamas. Those were fighting. The 107 women, children, and men killed near of Rafah, with the only crime to go and trying to receive food sent by the United Nations. Recently, we saw the fact that is being commented in the reunion, a soldier from the air forces of the United States that couldn't handle the pain, the indignation, and he put himself in an extreme situation, and he fired himself up in the gates of the embassy in Washington. So it represents a matter of protest of military army soldiers burning their uniform and raising their voice. So if a man is capable of firing himself up, we're not capable of rising Latin America and the Caribbean for the life, for the international right, for the human rights. Where is the International Court of Justice? Where are the organisms of justice in the international level? Or they're not seeing, they're not hearing? I think it's valid the concern of human beings upon life and distance of governments. So our region has a very straight position and accompany to the African Union, to Arab League, to Organization of Islamic Community, and the rest of the countries in the world seeking the ceasefire in Gaza Strip. The respect for life of Palestinians and investigate and judge according to the international justice to the Mr. Netanyahu and the government, fascist government of Israel. We demand understanding and for the construction of in a humanitarian lens here in CELAC and here in Latin America. Another painful scenario is our brother Haiti. As President Petro said, for Haiti, we got the freedom of a lot of places in our America. It was Bolivar defeated, prosecuted, almost murdered in Jamaica, who got into Haiti alone in ruins. And it was Grand Petion that pecked Bolivar and all of the big generals after and liberators of America, and gave it shelter and food and company, and allowed them to have 3 ships with 6,000 weapons and soldiers to go fight for the freedom in the rest of America. We say very few from Haiti, but us, we have our independence in the 19th century because of Haiti to his revolutionary people. And they've been punished. Not only the President Petro, where we're saying that you're right. How many invasions have been in Haiti in 100 years? How many? Remember the most recent ones, when a president was kidnapped, a rifle president was kidnapped and was taken in a South American plane. It was tossed around, and they have the applause. And from that invasions and the wounded and that violence, we have the situation today with all the components that President Petro just said, and the criminal gangs, the drug traffic issues, etc. Venezuela is taking the proposal of the presidency of Honduras and the presidency of Castro sick from the CELAC, a frame to help from the region that truly allow Haiti to recover the safety and the rightful government, and the people from Haiti get the right of peace and right of life. We're not agreeing with no invasion, bringing troops from here, from there. That's been 100 years. We've been doing that for 100 years. That's not the solution. A new invasion, we cannot disguise that, because that's not the solution for Haiti. The solution is that Latin America and the Caribbean go hawker and support it really and allow it to take the rightful path. There's a lot of subjects that we've been talking here. We've been reactivate Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves with the presidency of Honduras, with the participation of the President Salient Ralph Gonsalves, with the presidency, with the future presidency of the Colombian President Gustavo Petro. There's a world, a political network in development. So in the last 16 years, connecting Summit with the generative process, the CELAC has been marking a name for them in the world. So we are in conditions to build to concrete the relationships with the new world, with the new geopolitics that have been rising, with the multipolar world and multi-center world that has been rising. We need to get strengthening the relationship with China, the big potency that is emerging in this century. We need to get deeper in the relationship with India, the second big potency that is emerging. And we have to move forward in a joint way with the BRICS, the wider BRICS. That is, they're taking fundamental steps in the political field. And without a doubt, today the BRICS are representing the choice, alternative choice that we think as us to move forward the hegemonic world that is being imposed to us during almost 1600 years, to advance with the dialogue with the African Union, to make stronger the respect relationships with the European Union, to articulate in the new world as an emergent region, as a hope that we are. This year we were talking with the Peruvian Chancellor. This year is turning 200 years old from two big battles, decisive battles from the South American independence. The 200 years of the Gunibu battle, the last battle that was conducted by the liberator Simón Bolívar. We were together there, Chileans, Argentinians, Uruguayans, Brazilians, Venezuelans, Colombians, Ecuadorians, Panamanians, Cubans. We were together in only one army, in only one project. And we're turning 200 years of the definitive battle that expelled the Spanish Empire from here, the Ayacucho battle. December 9th, this CELAC, and I'm proposing it here now, this CELAC must take, alongside the Peruvian people and the Southern people, the commemoration of the 200 years of Ayacucho and Junín battles, a very important point in our history. I was talking with the Mexican Chancellor when Bolívar went to Junín and led from distance the army alongside with Sucre. Bolívar was a president of Peru and president of Colombia. And saying Colombia is what is now Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, and Ecuador. But then Mexico, on March 17, in a year as 1824, Mexico, the Congress of Mexico, it was turning to Simón Bolívar in a Mexican citizen. So when he went to those battles, it was going to as Mexican, as a Peruvian, as a Colombian. So it was only one army, only one dream. Our path need to retake those dreams in the diversity, in a political diversity, in ideology diversity, in base of respect and solidarity and love. We have to take back those original paths that are leading us into the 21st century for our region to be inserted with power, with strength, with prosperity into the world that is being built now. That's our path, Mr. President, the path of liberators from all times. Thank you very much.
We were listening to the statements of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro at the 8th CELAC Summit. The Venezuelan head of state says CELAC is mature enough today to have a general secretariat that can represent everyone. President Maduro also praised the intervention work carried out so far, but called to deepen more these strategies to have a stronger and independent region. Maduro condemned and called for the immediate end of illegal unilateral coercive sanctions imposed on Venezuela by the U.S., as well as the end of the U.S. blockade on Cuba. The Venezuelan president also condemned the ongoing Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people and urged the region and the world to stand against these crimes against humanity. Stay tuned with teleSUR for more updates in upcoming news briefs.